All right, so this section, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how I'm going to organize it, and I'm kind of concerned that we're going to have a little trouble following. So I really want you to pay attention, pause when you need to, and go ahead and write down lots of questions so that as soon as you do it, you can come to our Zoom session or email me or whatever so that you are sure you understand what's going on. All right, so we have to review a few things, and this first video is really going to be, I hope, review from pre-calculus. So sigma notation, remember, means to take the sum. Sum of the first n terms of a sequence, A1, A2, A3. So this guy right here, this is the term you end with. I'll use my little highlighter here. This n means the term you end with. Take the sum, that's what this sigma is. It's called sigma, that E-looking thing. It means take the sum of a bunch of things, and it says start with this first term. So I is supposed to be 1. This is the formula you're going to use, A sub I. So whatever's there is your formula. So on this one, that's you put in 1, then you put in 2, and you put in 3, and you keep doing that all the way to whatever n is. If n is infinity, you can go to infinity. Obviously, you can't actually go to infinity, but you can use some calculus and limits to help figure that out sometimes. That's called convergent and divergent series, and that's something that's a BC calculus topic, but maybe not this year. So we're going to do a few examples. I'm hoping this is review, but like down here, it says that we're going to find the sum if I'm starting with I equals 1, and I'm going to 6 terms from 1 to 6, and I'm going to use this formula. My formula is just I. So now when I put this in the formula, I'm going to start with I is 1. So my first term, I'm going to put into the formula, which is just I. So if I is 1, then the formula is 1. My second term, that's an A. I know it looks like a 9. You put in I is 2, and so, this part right here is 2. And then so on and so forth. I get 3, and then for 4, I get 4, and then for 5, I get 5. And I go up to 6, and then I stop. So A6 is 6. So I literally have to add those 6 terms up. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, that's 21. So my next one over here, I'm going to change colors. I'm starting at the 0 term and going to the 5th term. So A0 is 0 plus 1 because I'm going to use this formula. My I is 0. Okay, start with I is 0. And I put 0, 0 plus 1. Okay, and then I'm going to do A1, my second term, but A1, I get 1 plus 1 because I put I is 1 in. So my formula right here. And then 2, and I got to do 3, and I got to do 4, and I got to do 5. So I'm going to hopefully see a pattern, but if I put 2 in for my I get 2 plus 1, and then 3 plus 1, and then 4 plus 1, and then 5 plus 1. So this guy's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6. So I have to add all of those terms up. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6. I'm trying to go fast so this doesn't take so long. So part of my not great handwriting. But you get 21 again because it's exactly the same as the last one. Now this one's a little trickier. I'm starting at 3, so I have to do A3. And then I go to 7. Okay, so I have to do all those terms. Now I'm going to put it into this formula. Notice there's a J this time. You can use different letters. Sometimes K is used. J and I are the first, most typical. I being the first, not the imaginary number, not I. It's different. And J being the second, and then some others after that. But those, not very often do we need to go past that. But if J is 3, I'm going to put in J is 3. And then the X is just X. It's just X. And then 4 squared, and then 5 squared, because I'm putting in the J. Next I have to do J is 6. Now I have to do J is 7. Oops, I was going to do it in my head. 7 squared X. So that's 49. That's 36. That's 25. That's 16. And that's 9X, respectively. Now I have to add all those up. Okay, I have to sum them. I have to add them, total them. When I add all those up, I get 135X. And there you have it. So you can have variables in your answer. That's all good. All right, so let's do a few more examples. Now these ones, notice it starts at K instead of using I, it's using K, and it goes all the way to N. There's not an actual number. And that's okay. So we're going to be a little more abstract in this one, and I'm going to write them out a little differently. So I'm going to do 1. So my A1 is 1 over n, and then I got to put 1 in for k. Then my A2, I'm going to do 1 over n, and I'm going to put in 2 in for k. And then I got to do the same thing. So I'm going to add all these up. For A3, copy everything down, but I put 3 in for k, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to keep doing that. Okay, dot, dot, dot. I have to do that all the way up to n. So my last term, and I don't really care about the in-between ones at this moment, is looking like I put in n for k. So the very last one, whatever n is, it might be 100, it might be 1,000, it might be 1,000,000, it might be 2. I don't know. I'm going to make a generic formula. But notice that I can write it out just like this. Now, I also noticed that each of these has a common factor in front of it. So I'm going to show you that you can factor that out. And then you could certainly add these. That's 2 for this right here, and that's 5 for that right there, and that's 10, etc. Okay? And then n squared plus 1 at the end. And maybe you can notice a pattern, but that's a more generic formula depending on what you end up with for your n. All right, so this one is again, the next one is a little abstract again. It has this f of x in it. Actually, this is a really important formula. It is an integral formula. That is where integrals come from. Because what is it saying? It's taking a height times the base width of x, the change in x. How wide is your little rectangle at the bottom, and how tall is it? This is actually the formula for finding area of all those little rectangles like in the last little section we were doing, or the first part of this section. So if I'm going to find this little guy, I'm going to put in x is 1. So I have A1, and that A1, if I put in x, or I for 1, I is 1, I get f of x1, delta x. That's my A1. Plus, if I do that for 2, if I put in 2 in for I, I'm going to put, it's just x2, okay, delta x. Plus, and it keeps going all the way up to f of xn, whatever that n is, we don't know. It could be 5, it could be 1,000, I don't know. But notice there's this common factor throughout all, and you can, in fact, factor that out. That goes up to an if you're writing your notes thoroughly. So you can get these weird-looking things with all these variables, and it's certainly very abstract. But that last one's super important because, like I said, that's an integral. So we got it just like when we first started with derivatives. We didn't just give you the formulas and show you how to do derivatives. We showed you how limits work because derivatives are limits. Well, guess what? Integrals are summations of a bunch of rectangles that then you also take the limit of. So it's combining both of those ideas into one. So we ought to know some rules, haha. And here are a few. This k, like if you have something that doesn't have I in it, that k right there doesn't have any i's in it. The a does, right? It has an I in it. But that k is going to be in every single term, just like the 1 over n was up here and the delta x was up here. So I can factor things without my recursive changer piece in it, and I can factor that out. And that makes sense because if I just got done telling you that these summations are really how you find antiderivatives, right? Area under curves are antiderivatives. Didn't I say that we could take numbers out in front when we did antiderivatives? Well, you can with sums because sums are how you find antiderivatives. Same thing here. Same thing with this guy right over here. Just like with derivatives and antiderivatives, because like I said, this is how you get antiderivatives, you can take each sum one at a time. You can do each piece individually. This is just one of the ways you can write these instead of putting them right on top and the bottom. You can do it like this. It's the same deal. I like writing them like this. The program that I used to revise some things changed it. So it's just a different way to look at it. I thought it was nice to see a different way. But you can write them separately and just do each part and then add each piece. Now this one, if you do this, you're going to end up with your first term is C, because there's no I in it. You're going to have first term is C, second term, third term, blah, 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 blah. And there's going to be n of those, right? You're going up to way to n. So this is going to be n times C. That's a formula we're going to use. That's one we want to know and love. And I didn't write, I'm not going to prove these. They're just too crazy. But these are formulas for if you have sigma I. sigma I squared, and sigma I to the third. This one I'm not going to prove to you, but I'm going to show you a little example of. This one's kind of famous. Einstein was famously given a hard time by his teacher, who thought he was absolutely stupid when he was in kindergarten. And he was irritating him or her one day, and whoever the teacher was finally said, okay, add all the numbers 1 to 100, and to keep him busy and out of, I'm going to say her hair. And he notoriously came back quickly and gave an answer, and was extremely frustrated that he was done so quickly, and it was a pain. So I kind of wrote out some of the terms there. But he had this cool little strategy, and he said, well, I'm just going to take the first and last term, and notice that's 101, excuse me. And then I'm going to add these two, that's 101. And if I keep doing that, they're all 101. Well, if there's 100 numbers, and I'm putting them in pairs, I'm doing 101 50 times, because I'm pairing them up, so there's half as many. So how he did that is say, hey, take your number of terms, 100, divide that by 2, that's 50, add the first and the last term, 101, and you get your answer. So this formula comes from that, and it's one of the stories that I really enjoy, and how a young child came up with a really clever way to do math, and it leads to this formula right here. So you can actually do that not just with 1 to n, but you can do it from any term. So whatever your starting term is, whatever your ending term is, divide by 2, because that's how many pairs you have. All right. Now, how can you use this to do a little arithmetic algebra? Your algebra skills are going to get honed in for this. I'm not actually going to do this for 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. I'm going to do it for n, and then we can plug in 10, substitute in 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 if you so choose. I'm actually not going to do those, but you could easily. You'll see how easy it is. Instead of having to find, I suppose if you were going from 1 to 10, you could do that pretty easily, calculate each of them, although they're a fraction, so yuck. But 100 and 1,000 and 10,000, ooh, no one wants to do that. So we're going to use those rules I gave you. I'm going to distribute my n. And I'm hoping you've done this before, so it's not completely foreign. I'm guessing you're having to remember it. And I'm going to use, my first rule that I'm going to use is that I'm going to undistribute. Actually, I'm going to not do 2 things at a time. I think I was doing 1 too many things at a time. Okay, so I'm going to distribute that n squared, division by n squared. And so really I'm going to split it back up into other fractions. My stylus and my board are not connecting. Okay, so I'm finding that sum instead. So now if I use my rule that if I have 2 things, an a plus a b, I can just do the first one. That's that second sum rule, in the first row on the right-hand side. So I'm going from I equals 1 to n, and I'm going to do I over n squared. Actually, I'm going to go a step further and call that 1 over n squared I plus, it's just rewriting that I so the n is out front because, oops, my equal sign looked like a negative, because the n doesn't have anything to do with I. So the I is the part you really care about for this. All right, so I equals, at least for the summing part, you have to care about the other stuff, but it won't affect the sum. You can use other rules. So my other rule is if I have some part that doesn't have an I in it, you can pull it out in front. So I'm going to. Like that. Then this last rule, I'm going to actually just go for, there's not a single I in that thing, right? So that's like this rule. And that's Cn, right? So I'm going to do that. That's actually, the C is 1 over n, right? It doesn't have anything to do with I. There's not an I in that thing. So times n. All right, so hopefully you see that little arrow I'm going to get rid of because it's getting in the way. All right, so now hopefully we can see that some things cancel. Right here, this guy right here is just 1 over n. Sorry, Mr. McD, I'm really bad at saying that. All right, and this guy has a formula, right? When I sum that, it has a formula. That's the Einstein formula. And it is n times n plus 1. And yes, you should refer back to that, over 2 divided by 2. So now I'm going to use my wonderful Algebra 2 skills and start canceling. I see that that n will cancel with one of those n's. So now I have an n plus 1 divided by 2n plus, and since that's 2n, I'm going to switch this. I'm going to multiply by 2 and multiply by 2 so that I have a common denominator. And now I have n plus 3 all divided by 2n. And that's a formula that no matter which n I choose, I can substitute in really quickly, and I don't have to add 100 terms or 1,000 terms or 10,000 terms. So in the next video, we're going to talk about how do you use these sigma notations, the summation formulas, to help us find areas under curves, and then how do we find them with shortcuts, like we found shortcuts instead of doing limits all the time to get derivatives, shortcuts to find antiderivatives. That's what we're going to do.